One of the greatest strengths as humans that we have is also one of our greatest vulnerabilities. And that is we adapt. We adapt to our environment. We adapt to our circumstances, our habits, almost anything. And it's certainly one of the reasons that we've survived and thrived, but adaptation has a hidden cost because once we adapt to something, we stop noticing it. And think about it. After a while, you no longer felt the discomfort of a tight collar around your neck. You, after a while, stopped hearing the hum of your air conditioner. You stopped noticing the weight of a watch on your wrist. The collar didn't loosen. The air conditioner didn't get quieter. The watch didn't get lighter. The only thing that changed was your awareness. Why? Because you adapted. And that's where adaptation becomes dangerous. Because it doesn't just happen with our senses, it happens with our lives. We adapt to stress. We adapt to poor sleep, to unhealthy relationships, to constant distractions. We adapt to living below our best. And eventually we stop questioning it. It simply becomes normal. And I think normal is one of the most dangerous words in our vocabulary because normal isn't a measure of what's healthy. It isn't a measure of what's optimal. Normal is usually nothing more than what we've stopped questioning. And one of the clearest examples that I see with this comes from people who stop drinking alcohol. And a common thing that I hear them say is something along the lines of, I had no idea how compromised I actually felt until I didn't anymore. And so think about that. How do you know you're operating below your best when operating below your best has become your baseline? You know, it's like drinking from a contaminated water source for years. You don't question the water because you've adapted to the way it makes you feel. And that's what alcohol can quietly do. And it's not in a dramatic moment, but through hundreds or thousands of ordinary ones until feeling less than your best becomes your best. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. The brain fog, the lower energy, the disrupted sleep, the inflammation, the slower recovery, it rarely announces itself. It just quietly resets your definition of normal. And then one day you stop, not for a weekend, but long enough for your body and your mind to remember what clarity actually feels like. And suddenly, as if someone cleaned the windshield you've been driving through for years, the world didn't become clearer, you did. And you realize you weren't experiencing life with the clarity you thought you were because you'd gradually adapted to less. I stopped drinking December 31st, 2019. And people will sometimes ask me, well, do you miss it? And the answer is, I don't feel like I gave anything up. I removed something that had been quietly taking more from me than it was ever giving back. And so, no, I don't feel deprived. I feel clear. I feel more present. I'm more energetic. I'm more alive. And I don't mean this to be a teaching about alcohol. Alcohol is simply an example. The real lesson is adaptation because we have an extraordinary ability to adapt. And people are so adaptable that we normalize things. And those things quietly diminish our lives. And eventually we mistake them for normal. And so a question that I would invite you to contemplate is to ask yourself, what have I accepted as normal that's quietly keeping me from experiencing my best life? You know, we spend so much of our lives asking, what do I need to add? And the answers we come up with are another habit, another strategy, another book, another breakthrough. But what if the next level of your life isn't waiting for something to be added? What if it's waiting for something to be removed? Because maybe the greatest thing standing between you and your best life isn't what you're missing. It's what you've adapted to.